So, with the NBA Finals winding down, the offseason is rapidly approaching, and it's time to think about the future for some teams who were not in the playoffs, most notably free agency. Now, there are a lot of star-level free agents this offseason, but there are a surplus of good role players, and who doesn't love those? So today I'm going to discuss a free agent target for 5 NBA teams, starting from the bottom of the Eastern Conference, then over to the West, and so on and so forth, working my way up. I'm going to assume that every player accepts their player option, unless it's for a low amount like Jeremy Grant for instance, but guys like Gordon Hayward and Otto Porter are going to be accepting those player options. First up are the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs won 19 games in a shortened season, putting them right at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. What exactly does this Cavs team need? They have promising young guards like Garland and Sexton, and veterans like Kevin Love and Andre Drummond. They even have solid guys like combo guard Dante Exum and athletic wing Larry Nance Jr. So what do they really need? To state the obvious here, considering they have another top pick in this year's draft, I think they really need to target a veteran. Kevin Love and Drummond are fine, but they need someone to mentor their young guys. They don't really have a lot of cap flexibility, considering they're giving Kevin Love and Drummond a combined $59 million next year, as well as guys like Exum and Osman making $18 million combined. So they'll have to go for a lower tier free agent who will likely sign for an exception level amount. Many of the veterans at this level will choose to go to playoff teams for similar numbers, so if those veterans fall through, I think they should pursue Harry Giles. He's not exactly a high-profile free agent, but he showed a lot of promise when he was drafted. Unfortunately for him, injuries have severely hampered his career, but it's possible with nobody to really oppose him getting minutes that he may be able to ease himself into a groove and hopefully avoid severe injury. This past season, he averaged 7 points and 4 rebounds on 55% shooting, and he expanded his range a bit from last season. He's not a three-point threat at all, but he's upped his long two percentage to 39%, so who knows how he'll be able to progress with more reps. He's a young talent, and the Cavs could definitely use some of that in the front court. Next up is the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks were terrible, especially if you watch them night in and night out. Half of this team won't be in the league after this season, if that gives you any kind of indication as to how they looked. But they have a budding superstar in Trae Young and potential all-star in John Collins, as well as some rookies with solid potential in DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish. This is a team looking towards the playoffs next year, and they have loads of cap space this offseason. They desperately need every position outside of center pretty much, so there's a lot of guys to go for. They need a ball handler who can play behind and next to Trae, but I'm not talking about Van Vliet. I don't think it would be a good idea to go for somebody like that and tie up any potential money for better free agents next year, even if they don't attract any big ones. Van Vliet is pretty undersized anyway, and they have enough defensive struggles in the backcourt. Instead, I think they should go for one of two people. I know it's two, I'm cheating. Chris Dunn or Jeremy Grant. Now, Jeremy Grant can be said for every single NBA franchise, but Atlanta desperately needs someone who can knock down threes as well as play defense. As for Dunn, he's a very good defender and quite opposite to Trae. He might not be able to shoot, but he's young and that's a possible skill he may develop. He may not. He can also handle the playmaking duties when Trae is off the floor, and if you really wanted to, these guys could play together to allow for more off-ball opportunities for Trae Young. So those are my guys for the Hawks. The next two teams are going to be pretty broad and easy, the first one being the Pistons. The positive thing about the Pistons is that they're finally moving in a direction, instead of residing in permanent mediocrity for the last however long. The bad thing is that they're almost completely devoid of young talent. Kennard is good, Dubois is solid, Christian Wood is good, Bruce Brown is okay, but none of those guys are going to get you anywhere. They have Blake Griffin's big contract, but outside of that, their cap space is looking pretty nice. As for free agents, they could use literally anything. I could see a world where they give loads of money to Gallinari, but who thinks they should actually do that? It may not be a very high-profile signing, but I think that they should go after Josh Jackson. A lot of Jackson's problems came from things off the court, and I think Dwayne Casey could give him a structured environment to develop his game, and there isn't anyone on the roster who really has a case to play above him. He may or may not work out, but just based on potential, I think this is one guy the Pistons should definitely take a chance on. Now the Knicks. The Knicks. This is another team with loads of cap space, and while they aren't devoid of young talent, they don't have a ton of it. They will have another high pick in this year's draft, and that will make their core of RJ, Mitchell Robinson, and whoever they draft. They are a team that needs any and everything. With Tom Thibodeau at the helm, I imagine he'll want some veterans, and these guys have been rumored for basically everyone in existence. One guy I think could be very good for these guys, though, is Gallinari. RJ Barrett needs spacing to operate, and going into his sophomore year, I think he'll have a better understanding of the game, and having a guy to actually make plays for will help him out a lot. It will also make things much easier on him driving to the rim, having a guy who can draw the attention of the defense like Gallinari can. He hopefully will be able to also create some shots for RJ just by being on the floor and being a threat, but we'll see what else the roster is rounded out with. Our last team for the video is the Chicago Bulls. They recently hired Billy Donovan and fired Jim Boylan, and that in itself should make this team better. Having your players and coach on the same page is a pretty big deal, especially when it comes to the development of young guys, and this team has plenty of them. They have the 4th overall pick this year, and that should help them out a lot, and that pick will probably take out their remaining cap space, barring any trades. So they will also likely be limited to their mid-level exception. This is another team that should be looking towards the playoffs, and whether they get there or not is another question, but their free agency should be signaling towards that. The Bulls have plenty of offensive options, but what they struggle on is defense. When Wendell Carter is healthy, they are actually a really good defense, but he hasn't been yet in his young career. So one guy they could get with the mid-level is Paul Millsap. Millsap may be very old and declining, but he was very good defensively this season, even if he fell apart a bit in the playoffs. His shot is pretty unreliable, but his defensive presence should be a huge help to a team that is lacking defensive personnel. If they manage to retain Chris Dunn, that has the potential for some great defensive lineups for Chicago. If you got this far in the video, leave a like and subscribe if you feel like it. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike. I hope you guys have a good one.